welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we're talking about my most anticipated releases for the second half of 2021. I already did two videos that were my most anticipated releases for the first half of 2021, which I will link in the description if you're interested in what I was looking forward to in the first half of the year. For this second half of the year, I have tried to do a couple things to make this a little bit easier for myself. One being that I tried to be more selective and narrow down this list so it's a little bit less overwhelming. I also am combining the list of authors that I already know with authors that are new to me. I separated those last time, which I kind of like for organization purposes, but it makes it more difficult because then I have to make two separate videos and I don't feel like doing that right now. But yeah, also, I don't know if I made this like disclaimer in the first ones that I did of these videos for this year, but these are not necessarily all books that I'm definitely going to buy or read this year. They're ones that I am anticipating and I'm excited about, and many of them I probably will end up reading or buying, but not necessarily. These are just things that I'm excited about and I'm going to be keeping an eye on them and then decide closer to the date of release whether I'm actually reading them or not. So let's just get started. Put on my reading glasses. So I have my laptop here, and some of these I just have like buzzwords or things that I know about them that I'm excited about, and some of them I have actual like descriptions for. So let's get started. First up, I'm going to start with Darling by Kay Ankrum. So pretty much this is a YA, I think, contemporary Peter Pan retelling, and I am really debating whether I'm going to read this or not, just because, for one thing, I have been reading Kay Ankrum's books this year. I read both of her books, The Weight of the Stars and The Wicker King, and loved both of them, so I'm very interested in this author. But I don't like Peter Pan, and I already tried to read a Peter Pan retelling earlier this year, and that one did not go well for me. So I'm kind of hesitant as to whether I'm going to read Darling or not, because I do have faith in Kay Ankrum as an author, but I don't enjoy Peter Pan retellings. But that one is coming out in June. Also in June, we have The Return of the Sorceress by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which is an adult high fantasy, and the description for this goes: the deposed supreme mistress of the Guild of Sorcerers is on a desperate mission. Her lover and confidant seized her throne and stole the precious diamond heart, the jewel that is the engine of her power. She sets out to regain her magic and find a weapon capable of destroying the usurper, but this will mean turning to unlikely allies and opening herself up to unpleasant memories that have been suppressed for many years. So Silvia Moreno Garcia is an author that I've been meaning to try for a long time. A lot of people that I watch on BookTube and a lot of people I tend to have similar reading tastes to really love her books, but I've never read anything from her, and I really have been meaning to. And I think this is the first like high fantasy that she's written. She writes in a lot of different genres. So I'm particularly interested in this one, but I'm also interested in some of her backlist books as well. Then in July, we have Rise to the Sun by Leah Johnson, which is a contemporary YA romance, which is about Olivia. Olivia is an expert in falling in love and at being dumped. A crush-free weekend at the Farmland Music and Arts Festival with her best friend is just what she needs. Tony is 1 week away from starting college and still reeling in the wake of the loss of her musician-turned-roadie father. She's heading back to the music festival that changed his life in hopes that following in his footsteps will help her find her own way forward. 3 days, 2 girls, 1 life-changing music festival. So I read, You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson last year and really enjoyed it. So I'm very excited to see another YA contemporary romance from her. Also in July, we have The Lady or the Lion by Amna Qureshi. This is I think, historical fantasy. It's either fantasy or historical fantasy, YA. It's a retelling of The Lady or the Tiger, which is set against a Pakistani-inspired world of forbidden love and court intrigues. Once there was a princess forced to choose a fate for her lover, to the future in the arms of a beautiful lady or to the death in the mouth of a lion. But what came first was the fate she would choose for herself. So I'm not really familiar with the story of The Lady or the Tiger, so I might have to look that up before I read this book, but it sounds really interesting. And then also in July is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. And this one I'm particularly interested in because, so this is a YA fantasy that is a retelling of the fairy tale The Six Swans, which is a fairy tale that I've read other retellings of and really enjoyed in the past. That's the same fairy tale that Daughter of the Forest is based on, which of course this will be very different from that, but I am intrigued by retellings of that story. Then we have a middle grade, which is Journey Beyond the Burrow by Rena Heisel. And this is about a mouse who goes on an adventure to save his little brother who has been kidnapped. And it just sounds so cute, and the cover art for this is so beautiful. And it just, I don't know, it just looks adorable. And you know, I used to read Redwall when I was a kid, and so a book about like a mouse going on an adventure just appeals to me. Then we have This Poison Heart by Kaylin Byron. This is, I think, a contemporary fantasy, and the description says, Bree has a gift. She can grow plants from tiny seeds to rich blooms with a single touch. When Bree's aunt dies and wills her a dilapidated estate in rural New York, Bree and her parents decide to leave Brooklyn behind for the summer. Hopefully there, surrounded by plants and flowers, Bree will finally learn to control her gift. But their new home is sinister in ways they could never have imagined. There's more to Bree's sudden inheritance than she could have imagined, and she is determined to uncover it, until a nefarious group comes after her in search of a rare and dangerous immortality elixir. Up against a centuries-old curse and the deadliest plant on Earth, Bree must harness her gift to protect herself and her family. So, it has a beautiful cover and it has plant magic, so I am very intrigued by this. Then there is a book that I've heard so many people talking about, which is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. And this is an adult fantasy that is described as Mulan meets the Song of Achilles, a bold, queer, and lyrical reimagining of the rise of the founding emperor of the Ming Dynasty. And I think the main character's brother is given a great destiny, but she's told that she has no destiny, but then her brother dies, and she takes his place and his fate, and then I think she becomes like a monk, and then joins some kind of rebellion. It seems like a lot of stuff happens in this, but another one with an absolutely beautiful cover, and I'm very excited for it. And then the last one in July is Half Sick of Shadows by Laura Sebastian. This is another adult fantasy, or maybe it is a historical fantasy, I'm not exactly sure. But all I really know about this is that it's a retelling of The Lady of Shalott. So it's one of those like Arthurian adjacent stories, which I don't actually like King Arthur stories about like King Arthur and Guinevere and Lancelot, but I do like Arthurian adjacent stories, so I'm very intrigued by this one. Then there wasn't a lot in August that I was particularly interested in, but September has a few releases. So first up, for ones that are by authors I already know, it's potentially The Exile's Gift by Tamara Pierce is coming out in September, but this is questionable because the release date for this book has been pushed back many, many times, so I'm not really getting my hopes up. But if that's the case, the description says it is a story in which we learn of Numair's last years at the University of Carthage, the beginning of his conflict with the newly made Emperor Ozorn, who is Numair's best friend, his quick departure from Carthage, and how he survives afterwards. So this is the second book to the Numair Chronicles duology. The first one, Tempest and Slaughter, came out a couple of years ago. And I just love Tamara Pierce's world and her books. And I always liked Numair as a character. So I'm very excited about this duology, but the second book has been pushed back multiple times. I think in some instances it was because the author was sick at one point, so that's definitely understandable. I'm not getting my hopes up about whether it's actually coming out this year or not. But on Goodreads, it says September, so we'll see. Another book by an author that I really like is So Many Beginnings by Bethany C. Morrow. So this is a retelling of Little Women. And it says, 4 young black sisters come of age during the American Civil War in so many beginnings, a warm and powerful YA remix of the classical novel Little Women. So Bethany C. Morrow wrote Mem, which I really loved last year. So I'm always intrigued by things that she has coming out. And I did love the recent movie adaptation of Little Women, so I'm also interested in it because of that. I tried to read like the original Little Women, and I got like 50% of the way in and was like, I'm not really a classics person. But a retelling I would definitely read. Then also in September, A Song of Flight by Juliet Marillier is coming out, which I'm so excited for. This is the 3rd and final book in the Warrior Bards trilogy. I have loved the first 2, which is really no surprise because it's Juliet Marillier, who I love. So I'm so excited for this book. That's probably my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And then one book coming out in September from a new to me author is Sisters of Shadow by Catherine Livesley. So this is a YA fantasy that is described as Anne of Green Gables meets His Dark Materials in this whimsical fantasy adventure following the unlikely alliance between an apothecary, a witch, a warrior, and a witch hunter. There was more to the description, but just that intrigues me. Especially Anne of Green Gables meets His Dark Materials. That just sounds very interesting, so I think I want to give that one a try. Then in October, from an author that I have read before, is Well Matched by Jen DeLuca. This is an adult contemporary romance that is the 3rd and final book in the Well Met trilogy, which is a contemporary romance series that takes place at a Renaissance festival. And I loved the first 2 books that I read last year. They're just so much fun. And this one, I think there's a character named Mitch who was in the first 2 books. He's kind of the best friend of some of the characters in the first 2 books. And in those books, like, a lot of his character is just revolves around that he looks really good in a kilt, but he, you know, has a heart of gold underneath all of that. And I was hoping that he would get a romance, and he is, I think, in this final book. So I'm very excited for that. And then also in October, from an author that is new to me, is The Keeper of the Night by Kylie Lee Baker. So this is historical fantasy, which this one has an absolutely beautiful cover. Like, I think this is my favorite cover, even though so many of these have incredible covers. I just adore this one. But it says, death is her destiny. Half British Reaper, half Japanese Shinigami, Ren has been collecting souls in the London streets for centuries. When her failure to control her Shinigami abilities drives Ren out of London, she flees to Japan, seeking the acceptance she's never gotten from her fellow Reapers. Ren enters the Japanese underworld to serve the goddess of death, only to learn that here too she must prove herself worthy. Determined to earn respect, Ren accepts an impossible task: find and eliminate 3 dangerous yokai demons, and learns how far she'll go to claim her place at death's side. That just sounds so cool. Death is her destiny, and that she like goes to the underworld and she's a reaper. It just sounds like it's going to be really cool, and I'm very excited for that one. So those are all of the books that I am anticipating in the second half of the year. There weren't really in November or December that I was particularly looking forward to, but there aren't usually a lot of releases in those months anyway. But yeah, so these are all the books that I'm most anticipating for the second half of the year. I'd love to hear if you are also anticipating any of these releases, or if there's something that wasn't on my list that you're excited about and want to tell me about. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!